Hi, I'm Michael Joy. Welcome to another reaction video. I want to say up front here, if you're a subscriber or catching this video randomly, just know that this is a mold making video. We make a lot of content here and I'm a professional mold maker, and so you may or may not want to be on this bus if you're interested in some other things. But for the makers out there, get ready. Hi, I'm Michael Joy. Welcome back to another mold making critique. We are binging on this guy here. He has got some good stuff to comment about. I did want to talk about one thing. In 2002, I started a business called the Chicago School of Mold Making, where I was teaching other people how to make molds, and it led me into the food shaping world a couple years afterwards. That business is still alive, but not as a teaching facility. It's known as Chicago Culinary Effects. That's where I built my chops, built some wealth, was making professional molds for the culinary industry, whereas I was one of the first to do it on a global scale. It's kind of neat. So we are going to be leaving plaster molds to get into silicone molds, and maybe I'll show a little bit of food shaping stuff for people who want to make chocolates and other sophisticated things. But today we are back with Mr. Richard here. Like me, he didn't shave today. Let's see what's going on.
Aujourd'hui, je vais vous montrer comment
Okay.
Une théière, c'est un modèle qui est un petit peu plus compliqué. C'est un 4x.
I'm going to stop it. I don't usually stop his stuff, but I just admire the time travel effect of his studio. I'm not quite sure why he didn't buy a chair. He made a chair out of scrap metal and looks like an old sweater and stuff like this. It's funny, the frugality of a mold maker can be a bit like a farmer. But what he's talking about now is basically the seam line may exist visually for you, but there's ways to define how to divide a mold. If you held that teapot up like this and you shine a heavy light on it, half of it's going to be in shadow. The other half will be in shadow. That's your seam line, basically, silhouette. Now, the trick that happens here is that handle was put on by a person separately, most likely, separately after the body of the teapot was made. So the handle's going to have a seam line also, and if you copy it, it may lead you to a little trouble. I'll get to it when he gets to it.
Permanent, puis là, je m'en vais à peu près dans le milieu du bec.
There's a time when you'll be able to take that teapot, put it down on your belly, and hold, I don't know where the camera can see, and hold that pencil and just sort of trace that parting line. And you don't even have to think about it.
Le dessous de l'anse.
Now,
que je vais marquer avec des...
you follow that parting line as if it's believable, you're in trouble. It's a guide. It's not a rule. What was it in Pirates of the Caribbean? It's guidelines. Did you see that movie? No? Okay, there you go. Guidelines.
The code is more what you'd call guidelines than actual rules.
Je vais tout simplement juste marquer.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Marquer.
Kay was saying, oh, I watched it in Russian. Kay speaks 5 languages, so he can choose whatever language he wants to watch it in.
Là, ici, ben, on va y aller un petit peu à l'œil.
Okay, so you really don't want to make a mistake on the parting lines of a rigid object. And the rigid object is hard to do and easy to do in this way.
On va s'abonner. Fait qu'on va commencer immédiatement.
Let me see what he's saying here.
Pour ça,
It's easy to do because it has the seam lines given to you,
c'est comme dans mon...
but it's hard to do because the rigidity of the shape. And this is why you should not start molding valuable objects right away.
Ma théière sur une...
I think molding a teapot that is an original out of a clay is a lot fussier because you can distort that clay. This is why a model maker will make a teapot out of plaster versus out of clay,
En théorie, c'est...
because the plaster has to withstand the mold making process. But a potter
À l'aide du Tuscan, je...
doesn't build teapots in plaster, they build it in clay. So,
Égal. Mais comme je vous ai
all right, he's talking about get your axis correct.
dit, qui a été cuit, il y a de la déformation.
You have to have the
Je prends mon Tuscan,
parting line.
juste faire quelques tisses pour voir si je suis pas mal à la
You're
ligne.
going to put that parting line on and then you have to remeasure it. So if you don't do this part correctly, why do the rest of the mold?
Puis il en manque un petit peu. Ça fait que là, je vais...
So he's lining up this equator.
Ça, je vais vérifier mon équerre.
That's more important is you see how the back of the teapot is like this. If it's tilted forward, he's in big trouble. Everything has to be perpendicular.
Vérifier mon équerre ici. Parfait.
Again, things on video look like they take a long time, but we're talking minutes. And if you don't take these minutes, you don't take the hours.
Délicatement pour pas déplacer notre prototype.
Now at our shop we have lasers, so we could take a picture of this teapot in profile. I could give it to Balin, and he'll cut a parting wall out of acrylic. It's like this. Someone else would 3D print. All right, so he's working on this, building the dividing wall inside of the handle. This is where it gets dodgy. I personally always used to build up the handle with clay because I would suffer chip out all the time. What is chip out? Chip out is when you've poured your plaster and then you separate it from the mold and there's a slight undercut in the handle you didn't see, and then you got to patch it later. What he's doing now is he's basically creating a bit of a vent. It's two parts. It's a vent because when you pour liquid slip into the mold, air is gonna have to go out somewhere, especially in the it's like a chimney. You got to give room for that air to escape the empty mold. If you think of it this way, a plaster mold with nothing in it is empty except it has air. And so that air is displaced when you pour in the liquid slip. So where does that trapped air bubble go? You got to give it a vent. He'll have to vent the handle and he'll have to vent the spout.
Prendre pour faire le moule. On parle d'un pouce, mais comme ici c'est le bout de l'anse, je vais mettre juste 3/4 de pouce, ça va être suffisant.
Now, I believe he's going to make
Parce que moi, ouais, 3/4, ça,
well, he's got to set up for a 4-piece mold.
ça va faire quand même assez de plâtre.
I saw a textured foot on the bottom of this, so that explains the foot. The top part, there's other options to do. You can make a 4th piece, which will look awesome, or you could basically plug in, like the bottle mold, a big cylinder right in the top that has some special features in it. The simple teapot molds that you'll buy commercially are going to be 2-part because they're cheaper to make. And for most people, it's fine. Because the people that buy the molds the prefabricated molds are more interested in the surface treatment than the actual construction. So they're doing beautiful glazes, beautiful hand painting. They don't need a fancy teapot.
Cheminée de bec de théière. Alors, moi, je vais mettre 1,5 pouce.
Yeah, it's a fussy step, making this top piece of the mold. If you haven't made these before, it's very difficult to understand what's going to happen here. He's basically going to make what I call a step piece. And the step piece is going to be reshaped. He chooses to reshape it in plaster. I would do it a little differently, but again, I think he's got a lot more production years under his belt than I do. I have more artisan mold making years. So if he were talking to me, he would say, listen, idiot, here's why I'm doing it. You know? But hopefully he would say it in English because he's got me beat in French. I always use what's called a fettling knife. It's just a long, thin blade. And all these little black tools, I always lost them. They're so small. And I didn't like how they sit in my hand because they're so thin that I felt like I was holding tweezers. And the fettling knife gave me a good tip, but I had a pretty broad handle. It's like a drumstick or a chopstick, which did I want? And I wanted a drumstick to hold on to. It's just because I was using my hand for gripping all day long. I used to go home with really tired hands, and I used to have these weird hand muscles. They were like, we used to call them drumsticks. It was really strange. It was just from squeezing clay. That's why potters have like bare paws. It wasn't something I meant to have. It was like, that's weird. Now I'm normal because I've been on a keyboard 10 years. Okay, so you're starting to see the shape up of what he's creating. So because he's going to pour the big half of the teapot first, he has to build blocks so plaster won't go. You're pouring a mold section at the same time you're creating the negative cavity for the next mold section. So he has to dam it off.
Les planches, c'est tout le temps, comme je disais.
Stay tuned.
Et haut.
He knows what he's doing.
Plus l'épaisseur de mon plywood qui est 3/4 de pouce. Voyez-vous comme ici, là?
Yeah, you better get your clay cut nice there because you're going to put a piece of wood up on the end there. Oh, he fast forwarded. Here he's got it blocked out.
Une courroie, tout le tour, puis je vais préparer mon plâtre puis couler.
Now, I personally would not have used a step block like he did. Let me say it differently. If I used a step block like he did, I would have, on my table saw, I would have cut the edges at an angle. Because what happens on a 90-degree cut, when you pour plaster, it wants to lock it in, and then you gotta like jack it out. It's like it gets stuck in there, and then you have chip out. Now, it's not a big deal because he's gonna carve this bad boy, but yeah, table saw is a mold maker's best friend.
À l'intérieur de mon caisson en bois.
So he poured this.
Et alors, il reste le temps au plâtre de figer qui commence à chauffer pour enlever mon caisson puis travailler ma première partie.
You can see in the side there, he's got a tension block to help that strap keep, because his mold box kicks the strap out and you need to have physical tension. So you put these posts in with the strap to create more toy. All right, so these are his memory straps. I don't know what he calls them. Gonna break the box. Well, he doesn't break it, he just loosens it. That's the whole point of his straps. Now, from my perspective, that wood could be tricky to extract. He probably knows some tricks I don't.
Là, ça va être important.
Fussy, but important. Look, he wouldn't be doing it unless it mattered. You got to think of it this way. If you're trying to do what he does and take a shortcut from what he does, he's already shortcutted everything as short as possible at his skill set, I believe. Now that's the tricky piece to get out. And this is why I would have wax paper on the bottom. There we go. Because that clay is connected to the teapot, and if you struggle to get the clay off, it can loosen the teapot from the seam. And some people don't remove the model from the mold. There was a rule to not disturb the model before you pour the second piece, but production mold makers always take the model out, reshape the plaster, and put the model back in.
Il y a des morceaux qui ont cassé ici, mais c'est ça.
Yeah, those handles are bitchy.
Ça soit travaillé puis arrondi tout à l'heure. Alors, on va enlever ça. On va essayer de démolir le...
Okay. You see, it's just 90% there. Now the next 10% of refinement, he's gonna nick this out. I never did it like that. Maybe I should have. This is where I always had chip out. Oh, he did too. Yeah.
Putting inside the water, you think it would help?
No, I think that he had to put clay. Kay was asking if he put it in water, would it help? And I said, I don't think so. What he needed to do was put extra clay on the inside of the handle so that the mold that he made was actually molding a slightly larger handle than this. Because you're going to have chip out in any point that comes together. This little sharp area here is chip out. Now he's patching it. Patches don't last long, in my mind.
Le surplus de plâtre jusqu'à ma ligne de division.
It's hard to get glue to stick to plaster because plaster is so porous. So there's special techniques for gluing plaster.
J'utilise un surforme, puis des fois ça peut être un rabot aussi.
See, now it's nice he's sitting down. This is why it's nice to have your shop tuned to your chair heights, your waist heights. Sometimes I would still put a cinder block or a milk crate under the workboard to just lift it up so I'm right there at eye level.
Alors, je prends un papier sablé, là, en 200 ans.
We've seen this refining. This is pretty important in my mind, is that to learn something, you have to see it several times. So even though the videos have repetitive elements, it takes time to sink in. It's like, oh, mold soap. I can't tell you how many times I watch students make a mold and they're like, F, I forgot the mold soap. And I'm like, well, you may as well just put it in the trash because you're now a stone carver. I mean, there's no way to get it out.
Comme vous pouvez voir, là, quand ma deuxième partie va être coulée, là,
It's worse when they said they're doing body casting with plaster and they didn't put any release agent on. Man, the fire department will be there for that one. That is a burn. Literally, the plaster gets hot enough to burn your skin. In fact, when you buy the plaster, it comes with burn warnings on the bag because people are stupid and they body cast, yeah. So now he's going to carve out that little chimney, the vent. Sorry, he's going to make keys. Well, he's got to do both. You can make a dead end vent, which means it doesn't go all the way through to the top of the plaster mold, but it just creates this little bobber of airspace, so the air can still rise up into a negative space and escape the three-dimensional cavity, the textured cavity.
il va être coulé. Un petit canal pour laisser l'air s'échapper.
I don't know if he's putting a vent in the handle or what he's doing right now.
Tout simplement. Alors là, je vais nettoyer mon moule comme il faut, nettoyer ma table, remettre la théière à l'intérieur de la partie.
Yeah, if you're mold making without rulers, you're guessing. This one's filmed vertical. I just noticed. I totally just. I know. I'm like, why am I looking so close?
3 fois, puis après ça, je vais remettre mon caisson puis recouler ma deuxième.
I think they wanted to catch more of him talking rather than just his belly.
Mais là, c'est ça. Là, il faut que je mette un petit colombin d'argile tout autour de mon modèle.
I don't know what he's saying. It's probably something important. Damn it. Okay, so in order for that cavity to not fill up on the next pour, he has to block it back out with clay. We just call it chunking. That's the fun thing about mold making, is you just make up your own vocabulary. There's some basic words, but we usually just make everything up. So he's tightening that seam line so that no plaster flashes under the handle. This is my comment about pouring red plaster on top of white. If you just soap the inside of it, you don't have to do this clay step. I don't know, it's ballsy not to soap the negative space. All right, he's putting the step block back in. I was never good at that type of design. I always struggled with this type of design. Something would shift. Yeah, you gotta lift the box a little bit. Remember, if he poured the bottom half of the teapot this, it needs the top half of the teapot needs to be this. And if his mold box is only this, he's got to lift it up.
Il y a une cassure, je vais la boucher avec de l'argile. Et voilà. Il me reste préparer mon plat. Couler ma deuxième partie.
I mean, this is how they made molds thousands of years ago, you know? Yeah. So here's his plaster pour. Man, that is just ready to set. Oh, he made more than he needed to that time. I'm going to have to send him an email. He's usually to the last drop. Now he has to reshape this step area. And it doesn't take him long because he knows exactly what to do. But remember, my opinion is that it could have all been built into the same piece. Yeah. But the nice thing about teaching mold making is to show methods that maybe aren't necessary, and he knows it. He may have said it in French, hey, you don't have to do this, but I'm just making a video, so let me show you what you would do, because some teapots are wonky heights. Sometimes the spout is higher than the top of the teapot, and now you'd have to do that. So
On va laisser chauffer encore un petit peu, puis je vais démouler, sortir le matériel du moule.
it's so funny. I worked with so many French chefs, and I never learned French. Joie. They used to. That's my last name. Joie. And then they go, oh putain, which is like whore or something like that. I don't know. Yes. Do you speak French? Oh putain. That's Stefan. He always said that. Even when he was telling a story about his dog. Oh putain. So he had chip out again.
Bon, comme
Doesn't phase him.
c'est ça. Là, j'ai beaucoup de travail à faire pour mettre ces côtés-là en dépouille. Vois-tu?
He's talking about the different heights and
Là, je vais remettre les parties de moule.
how this fourth piece is going to work. I would say he's missing his teapot, right?
Puis là, c'est ça. Je vais donner une courbe ici là, pour...
I think just because he's shaping it, he took out the teapot. There's no reason to have it in there. These are nice. These are encapsulated lead rulers. You can get them at the art store. They're basically a flexible piece of lead, a lead bar, and it has plastic around it, so you can create these. I forget what they're called in French, because it's a French drawing tool, and it's really great for creating angles, organic angles.
Bordure cassante. Ça, il faut enlever ça parce que c'est...
Oh, okay. He's gonna carve out the ridge. Yeah. Anytime you have that, when that plaster feathers, I used to call it a couple different things. Feathering. I couldn't remember the word. Remember, I haven't been at the bench in a long time, so it's gonna be. I don't remember the last time I made a plaster mold. I think I was 30. Probably. No, maybe. I don't know. It's been a long time. So when I watch these, I'm trying to remember 20 years ago, and it's not always there for me. Oh yeah, a lot of silicone. Well, right now I'm at the keyboard, for God's sakes, but our business is silicone. Yeah, but we have machines that pump the silicone. Have you been to that facility? Oh, we got to take you. You'd love it. Yeah, we don't mix the silicone. We have these pressure things that push it out of the 55-gallon drums, and it just comes out like you're filling a gas tank. It's fast. Expensive, by the way.
But it's for business, right?
Oh yeah, but still, I mean,
We
you
have
got.
one here, right? Where I saw
Well, there's a drum right there, but it's not liquid silicone. That's all recycled silicone. All right, so we're talking, we're bullshitting while he's doing all the hard work.
I mean, he's doing the same thing.
Same
watched
thing.
The previous videos. So
Yeah. Blue pencil, blue shirt, blue teapot, blue strap. It's very thematic today. He looks like a shoemaker right there. Doesn't it look like the same sort of setup for a cobbler? Did you think of another object for molding? No? You gave up on the game? Okay, well,
Well, I was thinking to say cameras, and I'm like, oh my god, we have a sculpture of a camera over there.
yeah. Yeah, we did cameras for the Toronto Film Festival. They wanted chocolate cameras, yeah, I think, and film reels, if I can remember right. Sometimes my memory blurs on what they asked for and what we did. That was years ago.
Pour faire le fond, c'est un petit peu moins d'ouvrage. Je vais démancher mon moule pour vous montrer. La partie cassante enlevée.
So it looks like he's just doing plaster, but let me comment again on the value of this. You've seen the factory videos that if the molds are not perfect, could you imagine one being off and it goes through that machine? And it's like this? It's going to mess up the whole production. So this consistency really matters. And if your mold maker's, not good at the beginning, this is why businesses would try really hard to keep a master mold maker. When I was doing the trophy work for R.S. Owens, they had a mold maker there. I forget his name, but he'd been there a long time. It's kind of like this guy. And out of the whole factory, he was the only one that had an air-conditioned workshop. He was like princess, because everything, if he didn't do it right, and he was the only guy, he wouldn't train anybody. He was a real dill that way. It's like, well, why would you leave? That's bad karma. You gotta teach what you know at some point.
Je l'avais tracé, je vais le...
To this point, the first series of mold making videos that we're filming are the basics. The safety videos, the material handling videos, because I just want to get that out of the way, so every video I don't have to keep teaching, going back in time. People can move forward with me and we can get to the really exciting stuff that's usually not taught, but we got to put some stuff in the bag. So, and guys like this are helping because it brings awareness to one type of plaster molds is one type. I do 12 different types of mold making. So this is one brand of it. 12? Was that accurate or was that exaggerating? I don't know, we'll find out. It's a lot though, different industries.
Fait que là, je vais creuser mon dégorgeoir.
What's happening? More carving. So these days, a 3D printer person could program this entire section, but they can't program it if they don't know how to make molds, because they would forget to put in a vent, they don't know how ceramic handles, they don't know how the mold is going to be used in production. So yes, 3D printing is good, but not in the hands of somebody who doesn't understand the end use. This is where collaborations become very important. You got a mold maker like this who says, let me show you a mold, can you just make this, copy this? But then you have the digital guys only copying and they never make an improvement, but it is faster. And I got out before digital. I mean, our shop runs on digital now, but that's why I'm here and not there. I aged out, I built a business mechanism that could earn while I'm not there so that I can have these other startups. Remember, we have all these other companies.
Je finis mon moule, le sablage, des imperfections. Comme ici, il y a un petit morceau.
I think he's almost done.
Morceau qui a cassé en démoulant.
Yeah.
Alors, pour réparer ça, c'est bien simple. On fait un petit mordant dans le plâtre.
See, he's still dealing with that chip out. Patching and shaping is what you got to do. It's not a criticism. It's just, I mean, in the book in one of the books, I talked about patching because you're just going to have to do it. He didn't shorten his keys yet. And when you get into a 4-piece mold, sometimes if it's not done well, you can key it together and you can actually lock your mold together. And you basically just need to know the assembly order. It's like, oh, he's going to fill the mold, then he's going to take the top piece off, then he's going to flip it, he's going to take the bottom piece off, and then he's going to take the 1/2 off. And if you don't know those sequences, your molds can hold itself together.
Pour éviter.
I would like to hear what he's saying about the keys, because there's got to be more to it than what he's doing. Like why he does it this way.
Pas notre moule de tout le temps bien fermé.
I think he just said putain. It's not a polite thing.
Les chanfreins pour éviter que le moule ne soit trop cassant une fois qu'il est séché.
Okay, this is really also important, is if you don't know which edges are the interior edges of your mold versus the exterior of your mold, it's really easy to just say, oh, I'm going to trim all these sharp edges, and then all of a sudden you trimmed an interior edge, which creates a leak in your mold because you just knocked away registration. So you only shape the exterior. I wish I could have a little red pointer to show things. I don't know how to do that on the computer. He's like on the home stretch here. I like that he doesn't just stop and say, okay, and then you trim it up. He does it because my brain is learning, right? If somebody says, oh, you just trim it up, I learned a little. But if I watch it, I'm like, oh, look how he held that tool. Look how and this is for people that are interested. There's content like this, if you're not gonna make a mold, you can fast forward through stuff and maybe you like what's being said or you don't. But if you're making a mold and you can be paid better because you're a better mold maker, this is really important stuff. It's like a surgeon watching another surgery, right? If you don't do it, you're not going to be a good surgeon. You got to watch how it's done. All this is so that none of these edges chip out. Well, chip into your slip tank. Yeah, all you need to do is carve in some numbers on this mold.
Et voilà mon moule de théière.
Hey, voila, teapot mold. So as the videos go on, and you haven't watched them in sequence, and you see me talking about BS stuff, you'd be like, why isn't the guy talking about the molds? I encourage you to watch them in sequence because as a person sees more repetition, it leaves room for more dialogue. And I would like to talk about more mold making stories because that becomes a part of the business aspect of being a mold maker, not just a technician. There's a lot of technicians that are really good at doing something, but maybe they haven't been financially successful. I'm fortunate enough to have been very, very capable at a certain mold making thing that I put a lot of years into, but it's also led towards financial success because I've made certain decisions in my life about business, some good, some bad, and I want to talk about those too. So in those moments in between how something is being done, I want to share some other stories because there is quite a journey involved, and I think that it might be important, maybe not to everybody, like shut up old man, but for some other people, maybe it's like, oh, I didn't know about that. And I'll be like, look, we got a whole video on this thing. If you're having trouble dealing with a company like Disney, we got a video about that. Here's a heads up about that. And so I'm trying to make room, not just as technician-centric. And Richard Lampert, this fantastic craftsman, riding on his coattail to show all these things that I don't have to make a teapot mold. Why would I? I mean, he did it perfectly. I don't need to. So I want to front load all this to make room for something different. And that's where we're headed. So stay tuned. We got another mold coming up here. You can tell how many we do in one day by if I'm wearing the same shirt, because I just sit down here, Kay feeds me water and Gatorade, and then we just go through these videos. So enjoy.
Michael, can you teach how do you start?
This is Ann at work. Michael, can you do everything? Yeah, really. It's okay. Yeah,
I was working actually. I was replying to Bill.
cheese.
I'm ordering cheese.
Thank you for watching this video. We're getting ready to launch a new platform called Hand-ufacturing. It's going to feature a lot more educational films about mold making and casting, from very basic to advanced mold making. Our hope is that it helps the business entrepreneurs out there learn efficient ways to manufacture their products and bring a lot more wealth into their household. Stay tuned.